Welcome to today's deep dive. We're going to be cracking open a lecture on the book of Genesis, specifically the first few verses. And, there's a lot there. So I'll try to unpack the most thought-provoking parts for you.
Right, we're talking about the gap theory and the origins of Satan and even some strange science of light, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. Well, let's start right at the beginning. Genesis 1.2. The earth is described as without form and void, with darkness covering everything. Is there more to that verse than meets the eye, though?
Well, there could be. I mean, those Hebrew words, tohu and bohu, usually get translated as without form and void. Sure, but those same words, they appear in other parts of the Bible, and it's usually when God is giving a judgment.
Oh, so it could be describing, like, instead of an initial state, it's actually describing the earth after some kind of cosmic judgment.
Exactly. Which leads us to the gap theory, which suggests that there might be a gap in time between verses 1 and 2 of Genesis.
Hmm. That's a pretty radical idea. So the gap theory, it's not a proven biblical fact, but it's a fascinating possibility. It almost seems like trying to reconcile what science tells us about an old Earth with a literal interpretation of Genesis.
Yeah, that's how some people view it. But the lecture we're looking at makes it clear that forcing millions of years into this theory isn't its intended use. But, but it raises some interesting questions. For example, if there was a world before Adam, what happened to it? And when did Satan fall, actually?
Hmm. Yeah, speaking of angels, there's that passage in Job 38.4-7. God asked Job where he was when the foundations of the earth were laid, and then it gets really poetic.
Yeah, what's striking about that passage is God talks about these morning stars singing together and sons of God shouting for joy during creation. Now, the term sons of God consistently refers to angels in the Old Testament. So this seems to indicate that angels are present at the creation of the earth.
Wow. So angels existed even before the earth as we know it was formed. That's incredible. But if Satan is a fallen angel and angels were there at creation, when did that fall happen? Could it have been during this, theoretical gap between verses 1 and 2?
Well, it's a possibility. It adds a whole other dimension to that traditional story of Satan. And speaking of Satan, let's talk about his origin, because there's a lot of confusion about who he was and how he came to be.
Yeah. So how did Satan go from being a perfect angel to, well, Satan?
Well, the lecture here, they focus on Ezekiel 28 and Isaiah 14. These passages are addressed to human kings. But many scholars believe that they're actually describing the spiritual force behind them, Satan himself.
It's like this double meaning. You have this human king on the surface, but really God is talking about something much bigger.
That's the idea. In Ezekiel 28.112-19, it describes Satan as being full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. It says that he was adorned with precious stones. I think that's probably a way of describing dazzling light. He was even skilled in music.
So Satan was originally this incredibly beautiful, wise, talented being. What went wrong?
Well, the passage describes Satan's downfall as stemming from pride. It says, "Thine heart was lifted up because of thy beauty." He became arrogant, obsessed with his own brilliance, and that's what led to his fall from grace.
Pride leading to a downfall, it's a tale as old as time.
Yeah, absolutely. And Isaiah 14.112-17 echoes this theme. It famously describes Lucifer's fall from heaven, specifically focusing on his 5 I wills, his ambitions.
It's his ambitions that lead to his ruin.
Right. He wanted to rise to heaven, exalt his throne above the stars, sit on the mountain of the congregation. Basically, he wanted to be God.
We all know how that ends. But there's something in Isaiah 14.17 that I found really interesting.
You're talking about the verse that mentions Lucifer made the world as a wilderness and destroyed the city thereof. So some scholars suggest this points towards a pre-Adamic world, a world that was destroyed as a result of Satan's fall.
So we have a possible gap in time, an angel corrupted by pride, and potentially an entire world destroyed by his fall. It makes you wonder what other secrets might be hidden in those first few verses of Genesis, doesn't it?
It really does. And we haven't even gotten to light yet. Genesis 1.3. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. But even today, the nature of light is still one of the biggest mysteries in science.
Yeah, light is not always what it seems.
That's right. For centuries, scientists debated whether light was made up of waves or particles. It turns out it acts like both, depending on how you observe it. This is known as wave-particle duality of light, and it baffled even Albert Einstein.
Wait, so light can be two things at once. That's pretty hard to get your head around.
It is. It kind of challenges our everyday understanding of how things work. And there's another thing. We're taught that the speed of light is constant, this fundamental law of physics. But there's growing evidence that that might not be entirely true.
Wait a minute, are you saying that one of the most fundamental laws of physics might be wrong?
Well, it's a possibility. Um, there was a scientist named Barry Setterfield, and he proposed that the speed of light has actually been slowing down over the history of the universe. This is a controversial idea at the time, but in recent years, more and more scientists have published findings that seem to support his claims.
So even our understanding of something as basic as light is still evolving.
Exactly. What we consider scientific truth today might be revised or refined tomorrow. And I think that kind of open-mindedness is essential when we approach the book of Genesis too. Speaking of, hidden layers of meaning, have you ever considered the idea of the Bible as a hologram?
A hologram. That sounds a little out there.
It might sound strange, but it's a really insightful analogy. Think about a hologram. It's a three-dimensional image, right? But it's encoded on a two-dimensional surface. And the amazing thing is, if you cut a hologram in half, each piece still contains the whole image.
So the information is like distributed throughout the whole thing, not just in one spot.
Exactly. And holograms are also incredibly resistant to interference. Now think about the Bible. It's filled with all these interconnected themes and doctrines woven throughout. It's just like a hologram. You find echoes of the same truths in different books, different genres, even different time periods.
So the structure of the Bible itself is kind of like a hologram. That adds a whole other level of depth to how we understand Scripture.
It does. And it suggests that even seemingly small or obscure details might have more significance than we realize. Now, one detail in the creation account that often gets overlooked is that repeated phrase, and the evening and the morning or the first day and so on for each day of creation. It's kind of a strange way to phrase it, isn't it? Why not morning and evening?
I know, it's always seemed counterintuitive to me.
Well, the Hebrew words for evening and morning in this passage are arav and boker, and they carry more nuanced meanings than just times a day. So the root of arav is associated with increasing entropy, that tendency towards disorder or chaos.
So it's like the initial chaos described in Genesis 1.2.
Exactly. Now, boker, on the other hand, is associated with decreasing entropy, so things becoming clear, distinct, and ordered.
So each creation day starts with Arav and progresses towards Boker.
That's one way to look at it. It suggests that the creation days weren't just arbitrary time periods, but stages in a process of increasing complexity and organization.
Yeah.
God bringing order out of chaos. And that's a theme that echoes throughout the entire creation account.
That is a really insightful way to think about it. And we've only just scratched the surface of the creation week.
Oh, there's so much more to explore. Next time, we'll delve into some really mind-bending concepts of the Big Bang, the nature of space, and the strange world of quantum physics. So get ready for some serious aha moments.
I can't wait. See you on the next deep dive. Welcome back to our Genesis deep dive. Last time we were wrestling with light, how even our scientific understanding of something so basic is still evolving. But today, let's jump into day 2 of creation, where things get a lot more expansive.
Yeah, on day 2, we see this, another act of separation, another layer of order being brought to the universe, Genesis 1.6. And God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." And so this firmament is often translated as expanse or sky. That space between the waters above and the waters below.
Right. So it's God, once again, creating boundary structure out of this initial formlessness. It's like building this cosmic house room by room.
That's a great analogy. And, it's interesting to consider this in light of what we know about the universe today, like the Big Bang Theory, that the universe started from this incredibly dense point and has been expanding ever since. It kind of echoes this idea of, an expanse being created.
So you're drawing a parallel between the expansion of the universe after the Big Bang and God kind of stretching out this firmament in Genesis. That's a pretty mind-blowing thought. But you know what I find really fascinating is this concept of space itself. We tend to think of it as this empty void, but modern physics suggests it's anything but.
Right. We use the word empty to describe space, but it's actually teeming with energy and potential. I mean, think about it. Space could be bent, warped, even torn. We see this with gravity, where massive objects like stars and planets actually distort what we call the fabric of space-time.
So space is more like a flexible sheet that can be stretched and pulled, rather than just an empty vacuum.
Yeah, that's one way to visualize it. And even the Bible uses this language. There are passages that talk about God stretching out the heavens like a curtain or rolling them up like a scroll.
That's incredible. So you mentioned hyperdimensions earlier, and I gotta be honest, I wasn't quite sure what you meant by that. Are we entering the Twilight Zone here?
Not quite, but it can feel that way. So hyperdimensions are, well, they're a mathematical concept, but they have some intriguing implications for how we understand the universe. So imagine a flat, two-dimensional world, like a sheet of paper. The inhabitants of this world, they can only move left, right, forward, backward. They have no concept of up or down.
Okay, so I'm picturing like those little flat creatures from the book Flatland.
Exactly. Now imagine a three-dimensional being like us interacting with this flat world. So we could reach down into their world, pick up an object, and to them it would just disappear. Or, we could move an object through their world, and it would appear as these disconnected shapes that just like suddenly pop in and out of existence.
So, from their limited two-dimensional perspective, our actions would seem like magic.
Precisely. And now try to imagine a fourth spatial dimension, one that goes beyond our familiar three dimensions. It's really hard to visualize, but the idea is that there could be entire realms of reality existing in dimensions that we can't even perceive.
So, you're saying there could be like beings or even entire universes existing like above or below our three-dimensional reality that we're totally unaware of?
It's a possibility. I mean, it definitely stretches the limits of our imagination. But this idea of hidden dimensions, it might actually help us understand some of the mysteries of quantum physics. That branch of physics that deals with all the strange behavior of matter at the subatomic level.
Okay, I'm ready to go down the quantum rabbit hole. Give me the basics.
Well, one of the most bizarre findings of quantum physics is something called non-locality. This basically means that particles can be linked in a way that transcends space and time. So if you change the state of one particle, its entangled partner instantly changes its state to match, no matter how far apart they are.
Wait, so they're communicating faster than the speed of light? That doesn't even seem possible.
It is incredible. Even Einstein, he found this concept perplexing. He famously called it spooky action at a distance. But the experimental evidence for quantum entanglement is really strong. It suggests that there might be this deeper level of reality, something that connects everything in the universe, a realm beyond our current understanding of space and time.
That is mind-blowing. Okay, but how does all this connect back to Genesis?
Well, if we think of God as existing outside of our limited dimensions, then the creation account takes on a whole new meaning. God speaking the universe into being. It can be seen as like a projection from a higher dimension into our three-dimensional reality. And the separation of the waters, it might represent the formation of those dimensional boundaries that define our physical universe.
So we're only seeing this tiny slice of a much grander reality. It's humbling and awe-inspiring all at the same time.
It is, and it really makes you wonder what other secrets might be hidden within those seemingly simple words of Genesis. Now, on day 3, God begins to shape the earth itself. Genesis 1:9 says, "And God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. So we go from barren rock to this vibrant tapestry of plants. It's pretty amazing.
It is, but how do scientists explain that, like that leap from non-living matter to life?
That's one of the biggest questions in science. The origin of life is still shrouded in mystery. We have a lot of theories, but no definitive answers yet. Some scientists believe that life arose from simple organic molecules in this primordial soup, while others propose that life might have originated in hydrothermal vents, deep in the ocean.
So we've got a lot of intriguing possibilities, but no smoking gun just yet. What does that tell us about the limits of science?
I think it reminds us that science is a process of ongoing discovery. We're constantly learning new things, revising our theories, pushing the boundaries of knowledge. But there may be some questions that science alone just can't fully answer. And the origin of life, it might be one of them.
It's a humbling thought. But whether you approach it from a scientific or a faith-based perspective, the emergence of life is a truly awe-inspiring event. And it really sets the stage for even more mind-blowing developments on day 4 when the universe, it truly lights up. Welcome back to the final part of our Genesis deep dive. It's amazing to think we've gone from the formless void to a planet full of plants in just 3 days of creation. But on day 4, things really start to shine, literally, as the universe lights up.
Yeah, it's a big moment, cosmically speaking.
Oh.
Genesis 1.1.19 describes the creation of the sun, moon, and stars. And it even highlights their purpose, not just to give light, but also to mark time, help with navigation, even serve as signs.
It's like God set up this giant cosmic clock and calendar in the heavens. But what's cool is how science describes the formation of these celestial bodies. Does that, line up with what we see in Genesis?
Well, the main theory is called the nebular hypothesis. Basically, it suggests that stars and planets form from these massive clouds of gas and dust, we call them nebulae.
Yep.
Over millions of years, gravity pulls these particles together, creates this spinning disk, and eventually the center of that disk gets so dense and so hot that it ignites. And boom, you have a star. The leftover stuff swirling around the new star that clumps together and forms planets.
So it's like this cosmic ballet of dust and gas, eventually giving birth to stars and planets. It's a beautiful image. But here's where I get a little tripped up. If the universe is billions of years old, as scientists say, and the Earth is relatively young, how does that work? How can the Earth be young if the stars it orbits are ancient?
It's a great question. And it brings us to a fascinating concept called the anthropic principle. It basically says that the universe seems fine-tuned for life. All the fundamental laws of physics, all the conditions of the universe, they appear to be balanced in this really precise way that allows for stars and planets and ultimately us.
So it's not just a random accident that we're here. It almost seems like the universe was, designed to support life.
That's the heart of the anthropic principle. It's a pretty mind-blowing idea, and it has some pretty major implications for how we view our place in all of this. It even raises the question, if the universe is fine-tuned for life, could there be a fine-tuner behind it all?
That's a big thought. But let's maybe shift gears for a moment. On day 5, we get fish and birds.
Right. Genesis 1.23-23 describes God's command, let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that hath life, and fowl that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven. And suddenly the seas are full of creatures and the skies are filled with birds. It's this amazing picture of abundance and diversity.
It really is. But I feel like we can't talk about the creation account without talking about evolution, right? That's one of those topics that always seems to generate a lot of discussion.
For sure. Evolution is this key scientific theory that proposes all life on Earth descended from a common ancestor. This process of gradual change driven by natural selection. It's a powerful theory, but, it's not without its critics.
And what's interesting is that some of those criticisms come from within the scientific community itself.
Absolutely. You have scientists who question certain aspects of evolutionary theory, like can random mutations and natural selection alone really count for all the complexity and diversity of life? You look at the intricate workings of a single cell or the interconnectedness of ecosystems, and it's truly amazing.
And let's be honest, there are still gaps in the fossil record, missing links that haven't been found.
That's right, and the sheer complexity of these biological systems, it makes some scientists wonder if purely random processes can really explain it all. It's a complex issue for sure, and it's important to have, respectful dialogue when we're discussing these different perspectives. But no matter how you view the mechanisms of creation, what's undeniable is the sheer diversity of life on Earth.
And that's something Genesis seems to highlight, right? That emphasis on each creature being created after its kind. It's like God is celebrating the unique beauty and purpose of every single living thing, from the tiniest little insect to the hugest whale.
Exactly. And this focus on diversity, the wonder of each unique life form, it leads us to day 6, the grand finale, where we get land animals and, of course, humans.
The big one, right? Genesis 1.24-27 describes land animals being created, and then this really pivotal moment. And God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth." Creating humans in God's image, that's got to be the most profound event in the whole creation account.
It definitely changes everything. It sets humans apart from all other creatures and puts them in this unique relationship with God. And it's important to note that this idea of dominion, it's not about exploiting the earth. It's about being stewards, taking care of creation.
It's like God is entrusting us with the care of this amazing planet, all its inhabitants. But what does it actually mean, though, to be made in God's image? I feel like people have been trying to answer that for centuries.
It is a deep concept, and there are a lot of different interpretations.
Mm-hmm.
But some key aspects that people talk about are our capacity for reason, our ability to love and create, and our moral conscience. These qualities reflect God's nature, and they set us apart as beings capable of having a relationship with our Creator.
So it's not about physical resemblance, but about sharing in God's essence, his attributes. It's a powerful idea. But the creation of humans, it also brings up those questions about our origins, right? Especially those debates about human evolution. How do we reconcile those different viewpoints?
Well, the fossil record shows this progression of hominid species over time, eventually leading to modern humans. But There are still a lot of unanswered questions about the exact timeline, and you know how these changes happened. And for some people, the idea that humans evolved from earlier primates, well, that challenges their faith. It's a sensitive topic, and it's important to approach it with respect for everyone's perspectives.
Yeah, absolutely. But no matter our origins, the creation account emphasizes that we all have inherent dignity and worth as beings created in God's image.
Well said. And that brings us to the final act of creation, day 7, the day of rest.
Right, Genesis 2:2 to 3. And on the seventh day, God ended his work which he had made. And he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. And God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which God created and made.
It's not just God taking a break. It's a profound statement about the goodness and completeness of creation. Time to celebrate, you know. A reminder to pause and just appreciate everything.
And it's an important pattern for us, too. We need rest. We need rejuvenation, time away from the craziness of life. It's built into creation itself.
It really is. And with that, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into Genesis. We've explored some incredible concepts, from the formless void to the vibrant diversity of life, from the mysteries of light to the vastness of the cosmos.
Yeah, looking back, what stands out to you as the most important takeaway from all this?
For me, it's just how much the creation account, even though it was written thousands of years ago, resonates with modern scientific discoveries.
Mm-hmm.
The Big Bang, the expanding universe, the fine-tuning of the cosmos for life. These ideas, they all have echoes in the Genesis narrative.
It's like the Bible anticipated what science is now discovering. But even beyond the scientific parallels, the creation account gives us this really profound message of hope and meaning. We are part of something much bigger than ourselves. We were created by a loving God who cares for us and has entrusted us with the care of creation.
It's a powerful message,
Mm.
especially now, with all the challenges in the world. The creation account reminds us where we fit in the grand scheme of things, our responsibility to each other and to this planet, and ultimately, the hope we have in a God who created everything out of love.
It's a timeless message, something that speaks to all of us. So as we wrap up this deep dive, here's a final thought. If the act of creation itself is an expression of God's love, how can we reflect that love in our own lives? In how we treat each other, how we treat the world around us? Thanks for joining us. We'll see you on our next deep dive.